Our national politics may seem increasingly divisive, but it's a different story on the local level. For more than 4 years, journalists James and Deborah Fallows traveled the country in a single-engine prop plane to learn from Americans in smaller communities. The married duo visited places like Allentown, Pennsylvania, Columbus, Mississippi, Dodge City, Kansas, and Bend, Oregon. In each place, they met people coming together to create jobs and solve problems. They chronicle the experience in their new book, Our Towns, a 100,000-mile journey into the heart of America. James and Deborah Fallows also write for The Atlantic. Good morning to both of you. We're so glad you could be here.
Good morning.
This is a journalist's dream to have a fishing license to just go out into the country. So, Jim, what was the fishing license at first? What did you set out to do?
At first, we just wanted to find out what was going on around the country. We've been living in China for a number of years, and while there, we'd gotten on buses, on ox carts, on trains to go into the interior. We thought, what would it be like to do that in this country, especially, number one, after the Great Recession, to see how people were recovering, and number two, we had over the years been to a number of these places in our little propeller plane, and there are places you can get to that way, including that island airport in Toronto where we've landed.
Not so dramatically.
with better winds than you saw. But there are places you can get to in the Dakotas and Wyoming, et cetera. So we thought, let's see what's out there.
Deb, one thing I love, by the way, in the book are the asides about flying, which is a great sub-story. But Deb, tell me about what surprised you the most in this series of visits.
You know, one of the things that surprised me most, actually, is the public libraries in all of the small towns we went to. Mostly, you remember as a kid going in there to borrow books and read books. But libraries today have become something so much more. They're social centers, they're educational centers, they're technology centers, teaching people how to use computers, being the host for young startup companies to get their businesses going. Education is primary for little kids, and literacy programs for adults on the other end, the same thing. The social and civic life, from teaching, giving citizenship courses, or teaching ESL courses, or doing yoga, or the tango.
And Jim, you developed an argument basically over the course of these visits about what works. This isn't just, oh, these are neat stories. You have a sense of what works in these places, and it's working a lot better than in Washington.
Yes, we have a sort of high-level national politics type argument and then a practical city-by-city argument. The high-level argument is that just the time when we all know everything that's wrong with the country and its national politics and the real challenges the country has, from opioids to economic dislocation, city by city, most people think they're moving forward rather than backwards on those issues. And then we have sort of increasing patterns we saw of what made that work. One of those where I changed my mind was the idea of a public-private partnership, which seemed to me just this kind of slogan you'd hear in a political speech, actually means something specific in terms of schools or bridges or orphanages or things that make these cities better.
In fact, you talk about one former mayor, Michael Coleman, right, from Columbus, Ohio, and he convinced his constituents that despite tough times for a tax increase. How did he do that?
Well, this was right in the teeth of the 2008-2009 depression, which was as hard in Columbus, Ohio as any place. And the mayor had the choice: does he lay off very significant numbers of police, firefighters, teachers, et cetera, or does he ask his people to tax themselves when they're losing their jobs to keep these services going? And they voted for the tax increase, and the city is now one that's doing very well.
And one other thing, just as we've seen the country change in terms of the loss of manufacturing and mining jobs, what did you find in these cities about how people are innovating?
We found a lot, especially with the millennials, give or take a few years. We're going back to these towns and saying, we want to be here, and we're going to take it upon ourselves to start new companies, to start new endeavors. And one of the interesting things also is that the founding fathers in those towns said, these kids are what's going to make our town strong, so we'll work with them, we'll lend them money, we'll get them going in places where they can do it.
What I also love was the question you asked was, who makes this town go? Who is crucial to this town, and that was a key to knowing whether a town was going to be successful or not.
And the who is crucial can take all kinds of forms. Sometimes it's the mayor, sometimes it's the town historian, sometimes it's the musician in town, or a group of teachers. In San Bernardino, it was the San Bernardino generation now, the millennials who started out as artists, became kind of Pied Pipers around town, picking up trash, painting murals, and ended up going into the schools to educate the kids about voting.
That's really important. Let's talk about the opioid epidemic, which is devastating this country. What did you find out when you visited some of these communities? Can they do it on their own, or do they need help from the federal government?
So number one, this is genuinely the worst social problem the U.S. has right now. We were seeing it early on. We were up in places like Burlington, Vermont, which was exposed to this earlier than most others. I think this is a classic illustration where local efforts can make a difference. But this is one of many fields where if we had a more functional national government, that would be good too, because national programs make a big difference. But we found a number of sort of city-by-city attempts to deal with it, but it's a genuine challenge.
Are you going to keep doing this?
Yes.
Yes.
Well, Jim, I love that. I didn't know you were a pilot, so that helps, right? That helps getting to a lot of these places.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's places you can get to more easily by small plane than you can by interstate and certainly by commercial airlines.
And another great thing I love is the description of the country from above, because it's not jumbo jet height, right? You're able to see the changing landscape of the country.
It's, you know, there's when flying was becoming popular a century ago, the idea was that writers would want to be pilots, that all of them would want to, because you see the world so uniquely from 2,000 feet. An airliner is too high, the road is too low, but 2,000 feet you can see the logic of the geography as it comes together.
And the Norman Rockwell scenes.
Right.
Yeah.
It's fascinating.
Such a great book. Thank you very much.
Thank
both of
you.
Thank you all.
James and Deborah Fallows, we appreciate it. Our Towns goes on sale tomorrow.